coming your way. Hey, hey, it's video of the day.
James Carville's latest cope, a tired Nazi trope. James Carville popped his little bald head out from dirt again to compare people who do business with the Trump administration to Nazi collaborators during World War II. Roll it, Nora.
How disgraced must these companies that are sucking up to him, that are giving him tens of millions of dollars for access? Do you know these collaborators with the country is going to feel toward collaborators with this regime? Maybe you need to go in history and see what happened in August of 1944 after Paris was liberated. They didn't take very kindly to the collaborators. No.
Oh. Carville looks like someone liberated him from a glass tank at Petco. Glad he's taking a break from hunting down Sigourney Weaver. But is he saying these people should be placed in pajamas, have their heads shaved, and march down Pennsylvania Avenue and spit on?
I'm not saying that these people should be placed in pajamas and have their heads shaved, march down Pennsylvania Avenue, and spit on. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that did happen. And I'm saying that these people betrayed the French nation in the same way that I think that these law firms and these giant corporate conglomerates are betraying the United States.
Now, I'm not saying that James Carville is a barely functioning retard with nothing left of value in this world. I'm not saying that at all. I'm also not saying it's pointless to tar and feather him because he still sheds his skin twice a year. And I'm also not saying if James Carville choked to death on one of his morning feedings of live mice, he wouldn't be missed. Wow, it sure is fun to not say things. I'm going to start not saying things about James Carville more often. All right, Emily, I am going to give him I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt he was drunk, because that guy was a mess.
That was horrifying. But let's actually pretend for a second that he wasn't drunk, that he was totally sober, spewing that vile, putrid call, frankly, to violence, right? And we when we hear this, too, I think of Lee Zeldin, who was attacked with a knife. I think of Supreme Court justices who had people with guns on their property. I think of the New Jersey judge whose husband and son were shot on her doorstep. I mean, the calls like this to violence,
or
they
Trump
actually
getting
matter.
Shot.
Or the president surviving 2 assassination attempts, absolutely. But he's talking about collaborators here. He's essentially saying anyone who's daring to stand. But here's the thing. So he talks about betraying the United States. And to me, that was the line. Because what he means is you're betraying the institution that has calcified, obviously, in him physically, but also in the entire government. If you dare to actually represent the will of the American people, then you are considered a traitor to that totally thick institution that has this entire time been laundering our money, been bloating, been forcing people to just remain at the teat forever. He's exactly the institution that we are currently dismantling. So he can enjoy his 2 seconds right now and drinking on air, but it's not going to last after pretty soon.
Tyrus, you know what's amazing about that segment is that kind of dialogue is so normalized, it's not even a big deal. A couple of years ago, he'd be gone.
I mean, I just wish that the people over at the Lord of the Rings would just give Schmeagol his ring back. He wants his precious back. He's going to be a little asshole until he gets that ring back. Somebody give Schmeagol his damn ring back. And Greg, unlike you, I'm saying it.
Yeah.
He's a crusty old bastard and needs to get put away somewhere. Like listen, I lived in Louisiana. This dude is rocking the LSU sweater. It's so old. When he got it, it was purple, ladies and gentlemen. But what that really means is they dislike him so much, he goes for a new one. They're like, no, the one you have is fine. They don't like him. He doesn't speak for anyone. If he can't even get a green screen. He can't even get booked on a TV show to drop this loads of golden knowledge. He's alone in a hotel room now. He had to get out of the camper he was doing it with because the neighbor was knocking on the glass going, hey, you didn't turn your sprinkler off. It's been on all last night. He's done. He's from the past. Just give him his damn precious back, and he'll go back in his little cave, and he'll play with his little riddles, and we won't have to see him anymore.
Douglas, it is amazing to me that they keep using the N-word.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's like, it used to be if you called somebody a Nazi, that was like a huge
okay.
deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
But now it's like,
carry on.
I would just love people like him to come up with one other historical analogy for anything.
Yes, please.
Let alone for everything. It's just like, not everything is the Nazis.
Yeah.
Not everything is World War II. Find another darn moment in history that you can compare things to. Because otherwise it's this crazy talk. Regime. Sorry, you're talking about the elected government of the United States. That is not a regime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All his weird threat. I mean, he looked so sexually stimulated by it, didn't he? When he was saying, I'll tell you what they do.
There was something perverse about it.
You do not want to look at that guy's hard drive. But if the feds do, but I just want these people to think, like, no, you know, there are other people in history who you can disagree with. There's centuries and centuries to look at. That's what Tyrus said earlier. Like, we can educate ourselves in this country. If we keep on being lectured to by guys like this with one historical analogy, which means everyone's always a Nazi, and what does that make him? The liberator of Paris? No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think Paris was liberated by people like him.
No, not at all. Andrew, it is kind of just amazing that he, even after all the stuff we've been through, he will still cling to this thing.
What's even more amazing is they continue to put this homeless pork burrito on TV. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable. But I'll make this really clear and to the point. He has done to the idea of Nazism and the word that's used to describe one of the most horrific things that's ever happened in the history of the world, what stoners and influencers have done with the word literally.
Yes.
So the word means nothing anymore, and now he has done that to the same effect.
Literally. He's literally done that.
Literally.
Literally, to your point.
I know. Totally.
All right. At the end of the day.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.